And usually they spend the night, we just get trashed and have a good time. We don't remember the game, but it's an excuse to, go out.
Welcome to Shankcast number 29. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Pleasure to have you here, Matt and Mark. Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
It's been great. Let's check in a little bit. So we've published what, like 3 or something since we
3 official ones.
And it looks like it's been the feedback's been solid, right? We've been publishing it to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, and definitely appreciate for you, giving me the rights. I'm assuming this is your official.
We don't have enough time. Okay. We've got so many videos, but no, I just want to just give a shout out to the audience. It looks like people are enjoying the conversations, and a lot of people weighing in with their thoughts too.
And what I really like about it is, obviously this is mainly an audio thing, but on the YouTube channel, you get to see our faces, you get to see our facial expressions, and. The discussions I'm getting on the comment section, I actually like it when they disagree with one of us or all of us, as long as it's in a constructive, non-trolly kind of manner.
Right.
Because I always want to see what other people think. There are some things I might have missed.
Definitely.
There are some things I didn't think about. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. Thank you for your conversation, guys. This is great. And also getting to know Matt and Ian on, not being across the tennis net, even though I've never played against you, Matt.
Right.
Not yet. Maybe you could.
Yeah, you don't want any of this. That might be a quick one.
Yeah. So it's been an absolute pleasure working with, tennis minds such as yourself in this type of setting and this type of format.
It's been great.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, it's been pretty fun to, reiterate what you said, the banter back and forth, where I think it's funny, no matter agree or disagree, when the comments start threading and they're disagreeing, agreeing with each other within the thread, which is pretty fun because, at the end of the day, there is really no right or wrong answer. It's all your opinion. Yeah, and exactly, and that's why it's fun to do things like this.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And as you said, Shankcast was originally founded on there are some things that we can talk about that not normal tennis coaches in a regular tennis club environment can talk about, because that would get them written up, fired, or shunned by the tennis industry, which may or may not happen to me sometime in the near future, but bring it.
All right. Well, today we're talking about regulating emotion during important tennis matches. So this is. Let's go around the table and talk about the emotional low that each of the 3 of us have had that we're least proud of. Let's give a little context, for Matt and Mark and I. We've all had our own experiences. We've been around the block a couple of times in terms of competitive tennis. Where and when what's the most painful memory you have of just losing it emotionally?
I have 2. My first one was in high school, and the tricky one in high school. I grew up in the UP, so high school tennis wasn't very big. So I was a very good player for my area. And I can't remember what grade it was, freshman or sophomore. I started being challenged more, where I was still winning, but I was getting that diva status as I wasn't winning maybe fast enough, and I started doing the old racket chuck a lot. And my dad he didn't say anything during one of my matches.
When you say chuck, are we talking the frisbee throw, the bounce, tomahawk?
It was all above right there. And
you were an expert in.
Yeah, I was a good chucker, and so I'm playing a match. I win the match. My dad left before the match is over, and I get back home, and he's basically like, "If I ever see you throw your racket again, you're done."
My dad said the same thing.
And my dad, that one hit me okay, I'm being like a baby out there, whatnot. And I was good for a while, and then I don't know, it was sophomore year of college. And again, I didn't even play on the team, but we played all the time because of PTM and all that stuff, and playing competitively a lot. Was doing club and playing against friends. I hit a spurt where I started chucking again, and this time the difference was I had 5 or 6 rackets, so I cracked one, and I was like, not a big deal. I have 4 more, and then I broke another one, and I was like, well, I don't have money to buy rackets, so that one hit me too. And I think somebody said something are you upset for? Like, you're not even on the team. Like, what is your mindset? So those were my two ones that I got put in check, and I don't remember like specific. The one in high school was a specific match, but I don't remember in college. But I just went through a phase of like I was just being a big baby on the court.
Did your dad or your mom, if she was the one taking you to tennis tournaments, did they ever give you like a smaller talk of like, hey, probably not a good look, instead of that kind of like ultimatum your dad?
No, I think the reason why though too, like when I was a kid playing other sports, I was pretty emotional. Like it's pretty funny. I think anybody that plays, I don't want to say even a high level, plays sports from the time you're maybe 6, 7, 8, doesn't matter, and you continue to play sports, you are very competitive. Like you don't keep doing these things because you like to lose. So my big ones were wrestling, I think I talked about before, in baseball, and anytime I lost in those when I was young, I cried. Like,
Really?
yeah, I mean,
What age are we talking?
probably like 7, 8,
Okay.
up through like maybe, I don't know if it was like 10. I don't know if it was that late, but like team sports tone that down a little bit because like you're the emotion of the team, right, as well. But yeah, I mean, I went through like that emotional spurt. Like, I mean, I just hated losing so bad, and I didn't know how to deal with like the emotions of
Just process.
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, for me, I always expected to win. And I felt like nobody should be better than me, even though I did my very, very fair share of losing in every sport.
With that mindset, though,
This is great therapy, by the way.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think as we go around,
This is gonna be better for us than you guys.
So are one of us expected to be crying, and thankfully the whiskey's here.
This
Brought to
will
you by
be
Matt.
gone by this session.
This is filled with tennis tears.
Yeah, there you
We're-
Tennis
so-
tears. That's good.
I want to, and maybe we could talk about this in another podcast topic, but that expectation of always wanting or always expecting to win. A lot of people say that might be unhealthy, but also it could be healthy as well because you're out there and you're like looking across the net. Who the hell is this guy? I'm going to take him down.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is. But I would say it is more negatively in tune than, positively. But there are some positives to that kind of mindset.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick on that, I think now the difference obviously is, as you get older and you can think about things. And so a great example right now is if I was to step on the court with either one of you, I would be a extreme heavy underdog, but I expect to beat you both when I step on the court. The difference
Love
is when I probably would lose, I can process that much differently now. But I
You
don't
have
care.
a different lens. You have more experience and different lens to look through now.
Yeah, but if I'm on the court, I don't care the level. There's a reason I'm there, and it's to win.
Yep.
And I get it to improve and all that good stuff. But I can just process it now. Of okay, it's the competition's over. I can leave it at that.
And that's one of those things, too, where
Thank you.
I think it's actually tennis players on the ATP, WTA, and high competitive situations do it really well, where they are fighting like dogs on the tennis court, but as soon as the match is done, they're actually nice people. And I think that's very, very specific to tennis at a high level. You really don't see that in like basketball. You don't see that in the, in other, I would say, team sports. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just like, they're fighting each other, but at the end of the day, they're friendly people off the court.
It's kind of hard to be a prima donna in tennis because you take all the responsibility in either direction. It's like, when you win, it's fantastic because it's like it's all you. But when you lose, it's also like it cuts to the opposite way. It's also all you.
Yeah.
And I think in team sports, it's easier to be that kind of character that can view themselves as like the special one, and everybody else is just kind of like the
just
slackers.
there.
Yeah, exactly. They're there to like carry your shoes or whatever.
So is that your kind of like?
Yeah. So I was gonna turn it over to one of you. When did you
want to go?
have your
Sure.
meltdown?
Last
Cheers.
Cheers.
By the way. Mark.
Too bad you have to play later.
Cheers.
play and teach.
Oh.
So it's interesting. I didn't think about it before I asked. I didn't know what the topic was, so we sat down. So, which is how I really enjoy doing these shows that way. I have a really specific picture that came to mind for me. There are a lot of times where I was just being a dick and a brat on the court. In high school, I was only able to play 2 years of high school tennis. I was homeschooled. Long story. I played junior, senior year of high school, and I walked in my junior year and was won singles
Oh.
at a small, like a private, like Lutheran school.
Did that feed your ego, you think?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And it was kind of, it's funny. Like I think I was still a nice person.
Yeah.
I feel like I was still like humble. I didn't, but to speak to what you said before, but there was almost kind of an expectation in my mind, like I was going to be number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when there was that kind of feeding of like of course, like that's what I expected. And then it worked out that way. And then when I went to college and after doing really well as a big fish in a very small pond in high school and not making my college team my freshman year and then barely like squeaking on the team my sophomore year and walking on, suddenly I was put in a position where I was like the whipping boy day after day after day after day, and I carried in this now in hindsight, like it blindsided me in the moment, right? But I carried in this like kind of posture of I don't think I mean my view of myself was unrealistic. Like there's no question about it. I didn't have the depth or breadth of experience yet competitively to really understand where I fit in the grand scheme of things. So I carried in kind of a perfectionistic mindset. And when I started to lose a lot, it was very hard for me psychologically to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so I started cultivating this internal anger towards myself. Whereas like, why every time I lost a point or a game or a set or a match, I was like, what's happening? Like I had this like rage of like, what's going on? Like I'm blowing it. Like this is ridiculous. But looking back in hindsight, I had no right to have that attitude. Right. Like I wasn't that good.
It's such a common. I mean, I think what you just said and coming over to you, Mark, I think it's going to be an aha moment for most of the people listening to this, where they've probably had some sort of that moment where they had some self-reflection and like, really, I was behaving like that. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're behaving to an opponent poorly. Mm-hmm. It's just really your own behavior internally, a lot of it.
Obviously, when it comes to like purely disrespecting your opponents, like, a clearly bad conscious hook, but, throwing your racket or yelling at yourself, that's just you looking like an idiot.
Yeah.
But not disrespecting the opponent.
So the specific time in my head that comes to mind, it really is interesting, really kind of similar environment to what you described. I was at NCAA Nationals in Florida, and we were typically good enough to make Nat League. We would win our region, Division II, NCAA, and then go just get dominated by the other regions, like the good regions.
D2 is kind of a small niche. It's probably the smallest out of the, I think, 4 possible divisions in college tennis. But
is it?
It's Ferris State. Who else was in your region?
We were in Great Lakes Athletic, whatever.
Yeah, I don't remember the whole.
But it was like
Northwood.
It was Michigan. It was like northern Indiana, some of Ohio. I think occasionally we play a team from Illinois, but mostly Michigan. Yeah, mostly Michigan schools. So we would like each year make it to nationals, go down, and just get crushed on outdoor slow hard courts by super talented players. Anyway. So that's the context, and I picked up a habit of bouncing my racket. I never smashed rackets. I never really chucked rackets.
Where you throw it on the tip of, or the hammer throw or the straight down?
The straight down,
okay,
so that it comes up. Like I got really good at bouncing it and flipping it up and just kind of making it look kind of smooth. Unfortunately, and it got to the point where I just started using more and more like force, and it was almost like I was kind of daring myself, like how hard can I bounce this thing? So I have this memory of like playing a really good team in doubles in NCAA nationals. And we were Mark Hamilman and I playing them really close. And in hindsight, like when I think about that performance, like I was probably playing really well against a very, very good team, and I bounced it hard enough to actually like break it, to crack it. And I sat down on the bench during a changeover. It was the same kind of thing. Mark was like, "What are you doing?
Right?
Like what?" Like I had like this shame like moment, and where it was like it kind of like opened my eyes. Like what am I doing? Like I should be having fun right now. Anyway, that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
It's like in a moment where I should have been enjoying it so much, and I should have been in the moment and having so much like fun competing. It was the opposite of that, and that's really a shame.
Well, the important question is, did you win that match?
No. Oh. No.
Typically, when the Ferris crew went down there was no matches won. Even like our best players that were, ridiculous. Like the top 1 or 2 guys, which typically there was separation from 1 and 2, and
like
kind
they
of
would
the
have
rest of the
good
team.
matches.
Yeah,
and
but
then
they would still
number
lose.
like 3, 4, 5, 6 would kind of get
Were they
blown
foreigners?
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm seeing that in D1 and D2 and even a little bit of D3 now,
Yep.
where it's like, oh, this guy from Eastern Germany that barely speaks English, just
Yep.
an absolute stud at the number 1 spot. So for me, and it's kind of in that, it's funny enough because obviously we're kind of around the same age, but all of these like eye-openers, or at least part of it, is right around, the, let's say 14 and probably 20 years old kind of mark.
Mm-hmm.
And for my tick, when I was a junior, my background is I think I was almost nationally ranked at 12 and under. And then that ranking started to drop off because I was a late bloomer, where everyone was, hitting that part of their life. They were like almost 6 feet tall. And for context, going into my freshman year in high school, I was only 4'9" and 85 pounds. I was very much a late bloomer, so that's why my ranking started to drop.
That's where I'm about at right now too. I'm just kidding.
So, I had a really big ego at 12 and under because I was like the number 1 seed or the 2 seed, and these.
You probably never missed, right?
Well, I missed a little bit, but I was just very, very quick,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew how to hit a kick serve and a slice serve. So not a lot of aces, but
A lot of kids can't handle that at
Exactly.
12 years old. Yeah.
but eventually people were hitting 100-mile-per-hour serves at me. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm only 4'8". Like, jeez. So going into high school, especially on my freshman year, I played number 3. So I had like 35 wins and maybe 2 losses at that slot. And I think I'll take a look at it. I technically have the most wins in my high school ever at the varsity level because I played number 3 my freshman year at varsity, and I was just rolling people. Those were fun times. But when I started playing the number 1 singles, and when I started losing matches that I thought I didn't want to lose, what I did was I would punch my tennis racket.
Oh yeah, the bloody
Specifically the
knuckles.
strings. Specifically the
Right.
strings.
Yeah, that's
Because I used
That's
to
brutal.
chuck rackets when I was 12 just because I had an ego problem, and my mom was like, oh, okay, don't do that. I'm like, fine. So I find another way to do it. Oh, I could punch my racket and punch my strings. That's not damaging anything except my knuckles, but thankfully they healed. But looking back at it, no one ever really told me, hey, stop punching your knuckles. Obviously it just hurt after
Right.
the match. But looking back at it now through the lens of a almost 31-year-old, I'm like, yeah, that was kind of stupid. But for me, given the fact that I do post a lot of YouTube stuff right now, especially playing my former students, one of the things that comes to mind was I played a former student of mine named Drew, and he is he's a recruit for a Division I school in, I believe, North Dakota or South Dakota. And I played him twice in the past before this match, and I beat him in straight sets, which is awesome. And I played him recently, I think in February, and he destroyed me like 1 and 2. He was playing super, super well. And then there was one specific point where I chucked my racket against the tarp.
Were you recording this
Oh
match?
yeah, I'll send it to you guys.
Did you post it?
Yeah, I posted it.
Oh wow, good for you.
And
Yeah,
the reason
that's
why,
awesome.
and the reason why I'm kind of proud of posting it, not to show that one of my former students just kicked the living tar out of me, was because I did want to show people how angry I sometimes get.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have done the easy way out and just kind of edited it out. But
no, I think it's important
Yeah.
to show. I
Yep.
mean, we're all human.
Yeah.
I think there's a sorry, I'll
ahead.
send it back over to you. But I think there's a kind of a bit of a consensus in the tennis community, players or coaches, that competing the right way is to have this Iceman stoic and that's like the best way to be a competitive tennis player. And we can talk about this. Like, frankly, I just don't agree with that. I don't think that's realistic. For some people it is. For some people that might be an ideal like mental state, but I think for most humans that's not realistic.
No, I absolutely agree. It's not realistic for most human beings. I mean, you have quote unquote perfect people like Roger Federer, Nadal with his fighting mentality.
Roger, he went through a streak where he was a very
everybody
angry player.
forgets and getting off topic a little bit of the gentleman's sport of tennis, and like you said, you're not really supposed to show that emotion. And Federer, I mean, he's like the model tennis player now, but if people remember back in the day, he's even talked about it where he went through his baby phase, and he was, I mean, it was really, really bad. I mean,
a lot of fans don't realize
no,
that
they
about
don't,
Roger.
and that's where I don't know if he'll ever turn the corner, but talk about a lot about Kyrgios on how his temper and his mentality. I don't know if it'll change, but he's
I don't
still
see him changing.
I don't either, but
I think he enjoys it too much.
I agree, but he's still 23 or something. He's still pretty young. Again, I don't know. I agree. I don't think he will change, but it's just going back to the fact of a lot of people forget early on professional players when they kind of clean up their act when they started winning, when they were losing when they were younger. They don't remember that part of it because there was other players dominating and they're losing first round, second round. You don't remember those names unless you're a really hardcore fan.
Yeah, Kyrgios is 25.
25,
So he's not young, but he's definitely not.
No, I get it.
It's pretty baked in.
Yeah,
at that point.
but again, it's just more of he's a higher profile too. Yeah. But again, a lot of these guys that went through their trials and tribulations, they're just getting beat for a second round, having their hissy fits. And
oh wait, did we just say Roger Federer is not perfect? Oh my God, our tennis is gonna cancel us,
dude. You're gonna get so many thumbs down
on
this video now.
Oh yeah, my career's over.
there goes the Shankcast. Yeah.
No, but for real though, I think there's a undercurrent of like an attitude that certain player, like fans of certain players, view their hero as being like this infallible like tennis machine, and B, that's the way like you're supposed to play tennis.
No,
and if you leave that little shell of like perfection, then like you're doing it wrong or something. Like I don't even know what to say. You're not playing right. Like that's not the way you're supposed to play tennis.
Well, and think about it, like maybe tennis and golf. And again, we've kind of talked about this before, but every other sport. Okay, that has
some great meltdowns.
Well, yeah. The club chuck in the pond. You're like, oh, damn it, I can't get that one.
So
back.
classic.
Yeah. I gotta. But if you think about like every other sport, and again, I understand at the professional level, they're playing for more than just pride. They're playing for paycheck endorsements. I get all of that. Okay, but if a tennis player, even if it's not. Just being disrespectful is arguing with the ump. They're like chastised by the crowd. Yeah. Every other sport, coaches talk to umpires or refs, players do it. And sometimes like you get like basketball, you get teed up and it goes past that line.
Think about like baseball. Like it's celebrated.
Yes.
Like, it's encouraged for the coach to
go
out there and kick dirt.
And that's the one thing for me personally.
Can you imagine in tennis if you kick dirt on the
kick some clay.
Uncle Tony getting out of the stands, just shaking the umpire chair.
But I think that's always kind of been more my complaint with tennis too is, and again, I'm not really a purist in any sport. Anything that can modify and change for the enjoyment and entertainment, I'm typically all for. But one of my constant beefs in tennis is there's not enough emotion in the game because it's just. I mean, there's emotion
from
Kyrgios
is a good.
I think he's great for the game personally. Yeah, I mean, I think and that's the one thing. If you look at like other sports, in Star Wars geek reference, the Evil Empire. I love the Evil Empire. Okay, because in the classic, you almost need the good guys versus the bad guys, right? Yep. And in other sports, right, you've had that where. For a while in basketball, everybody wanted to see Golden State win because they were new and hot. And then they started dominating. Everyone's like, oh, they can't stand Curry and he's strutting too much. And they kind of became villains. And that's fun. Like it's fun to have that. Like the Patriots winning every single year in football. And then Brady winning again, you know.
Stupid Brady.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think it's fun to kind of have that dynamic. And you had that more in the 80s, right, with McEnroe and Connors. And they were
The Last Dance documentary. I thought they highlighted that so well with the Pistons and Rodman against the Bulls.
I didn't see that. I should.
Oh, it's so
Dude,
good.
It's really good.
It's amazing.
Okay. Yeah, any competitor, any athletic fan should watch that documentary.
I just saw the memes.
It's incredible.
It's really good. But, again, it goes back to the emotion in tennis. I think there should be more.
So I vote we shift gears a little bit because the topic
supposedly
we got
a little off
is
topic.
regulating emotion. Yeah. So we just kind of hyped up or touted like emotion, showing emotion. But I think we'd all agree that there's a certain line that when it gets, we all shared stories that I think we would all say were negative examples.
So coming back from 10 minutes ago, my eye opener with my former student Drew is when I chucked my racket against the back tarp, and then someone called me out on the comments on it, which is good. I want
great.
you guys
Yeah,
to call
it's
me
great.
out. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm the closest thing to perfect there possibly is on YouTube, but.
You mean closest thing from?
Yes, closest thing from.
That's a really critical.
Freudian slip. Sorry. Can you tell I'm a little bit humble? But someone did call me out, and thankfully, and they said, "Dude, there's a lesson in an indoor tennis facility next to you that's like a 7-year-old kid learning how to hit a forehand. You look like an idiot." And I'm like, you know what?
This happened in a regionals match too, right?
Yes.
Or you
in a
you
whole
got
different
called
level.
out.
Yeah.
In that also.
In a whole different level. In a slightly different level. There was a third party there, meaning the umpire. No, I did not kick dirt on him, but at the time I wanted to.
Because they were hard courts.
He brings a little baggie, like a little baggie full of dirt.
Right in the eyes.
But, and I followed up I was in a hotel room, obviously, because I was in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, which is apparently like Las Vegas of the Midwest. And I can't even say that was true.
That's good.
But I'm like, oh, I
Shout out
apologize.
Ohio.
Yeah.
I looked like an idiot. And
I thought I really appreciated that you uploaded the like sorry guys video.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good of you to handle it that way.
And was it easy? Absolutely not. I would argue it's one of the hardest videos I've had to. I didn't even script it. I just kind of had some talking points, and I just edited it, and I was just like, okay, well, let's publish this, and it was good feedback. I saw your feedback on that too. So
Yeah, if I
the
remember correctly,
comments-
my comment was essentially, it's so important to share things like this because it's real. Like this is real life. For
Exactly.
like if you're going to be, it takes seriously competitive tennis, you will have to deal with those emotions.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to insulate yourself from that kind of frustration.
So I'm like, I'm like, oh, I gotta calm down on stuff like that. And it's always gonna be a struggle. It's never gonna be,
You won't
rainbows
ever be
and
a
daisies.
machine. Yeah.
Unfortunately not. So back to this topic. How do you guys deal with it?
Yeah, so let's kind of go around the table and give some like super like practical, like for ourselves personally, what's been like the go-to mindset or perspective or like strategy or whatever tip to handle it a little bit better.
Are we talking during a match or after the match?
I think during.
During, after, it's pretty clear what we use to handle emotions with in the form of liquid therapy.
So for me, I just, when I'm on the court and the momentum's starting to shift and I'm possibly making errors that I wasn't making and I'm starting to get frustrated with myself, honestly, I just take, hopefully it could be during the changeover if I'm walking back to the curtain, I just kind of take a Zen moment of, this is a time.
Think about Batman.
Yeah, think about Batman.
Think about Batman.
But this is a time, and again, I'm in a different place than obviously others, right? I have a wife and 2 kids where I'm looking at, this is a time I enjoy being on the court. And if I'm going to continue to be angry, this is not going to be time well spent for me where I could have been doing this for 2 hours insteid.
So it's so much easier said than done, though. It's one thing to tell yourself, but
it is. And again, it doesn't, I think the other thing, honestly, is the cues and practical things we're going to give people, it's not always going to work, right? I mean, there's no magic formula for how you're going to process or if you're going to be able to get over it. But for me, it's just more of like, in the moment of putting in perspective of my time, which, as you know, being a dad too, you don't have a lot of. And
it's precious.
Yeah, and I can keep getting angrier and angrier and angrier, or I can, chill out a little bit and see how the chips fall and things like that. I don't really have like a rubber band on the wrist where I snap it or, I hit the ball at the curtain. I'll for me, like, kind of yell something out. I typically yell my last name, like, Lemery, or damn it, something like that. But then it's like that, like, burst, I'm usually, now, there could be more that follow that, but then I'm usually, I wouldn't say I'm always fine, but I'm trying to bring the emotion down with that. So, I mean, again, mine is just more of inside my own head of putting in perspective of like, why am I here? what, should I really be getting that angry for missing 3 forehands in a row? And hopefully the answer is no. Sometimes it's probably still yes.
So you're saying that you yelling out short bursts of vocal anger helps a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll go the other way too. In all honesty, when maybe I'm fighting on some points or building some momentum, and I hit a really good shot, or it's been a long rally. I mean, I'll yell out the "Come on, let's go," to myself and things like that.
Can I give you a recommendation?
Sure.
Bue.
Say what?
Bue.
Okay.
Andrei Rublev. I'll show you.
Oh
later.
yeah.
But that come on, obviously, as you said, that's having a good balance of shouting yourself out in a slightly negative tone, but
Yeah.
obviously I think it's a form of encouragement,
Right?
Vocal self-coaching. Thanks, Alex Lau. Shout out to you. But it's. I would love to get him on this. And just hear
he'd
his
be
thoughts on-
fantastic. Yeah,
especially for this topic.
I would imagine him being completely transparent and
Yeah. But as you said, it's a good thing to have the opposite side of having a more positive vocal outburst after something goes your way on the singles court.
Yeah.
I think different personality. I think just naturally, some of us are more fatalist or pessimistic, and other people are more optimistic and like rainbows and unicorns and whatever.
Puppy dogs and ice cream. Yeah.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, so you're more pessimist?
My tagline for that is I'm pretty optimistic for a pessimist.
I like that.
Yeah, that's
I can
pretty good.
kind of relate to that. What about you?
I'd probably say I'm more optimistic.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
there's some things I guess I'm pessimistic about, but I think I'm more optimistic on. And it's tough. I mean, we've gotten to know each other a lot more in obviously the last year than we have. There's not a lot of things that really get deep under my skin that bother me. So I have a very laid back personality to start.
So it's interesting that you would like kind of connect with the negative outburst when maybe personality-wise you're a little more on the
and I think
positive.
it's just more of like own expectations in yourself and things like that. But yeah, I'd probably say I'm more optimistic on that end.
I like to say I like to think I'm a realist, but I'm probably leaning a little on the pessimistic side of things. So I tend to have more of a negative. Not to say like, listen, I would say the last 6 months as I've come out and started to compete again have been the most happiness I've had in
Competing.
very tense, like competitive situations. I'm very happy with where I am right now, mentally as a competitor. But on average, if I have to let out some kind of like emotional steam, it's more on the negative side for me. And I think that's important to do.
Yeah.
I think everybody has kind of an ideal place on the spectrum from like being very bored and unengaged. Is that a word? Unengaged? Unengaged?
Unengaged.
Sure.
Unengaged. And like
Disengaged.
There you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
disengaged. And just like not into it. And all the way over on the far other end of the spectrum, like just freaking out and like way over like hyped and stimulated. And I think everybody has like a perfect spot on that spectrum. So like, Bjorn Borg is like hanging out at like a 2.5 or a 3 and just like chill and like relaxed.
McEnroe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying. Yeah, McEnroe. Like his ideal state is like at a 9, like
Plays his
borderline
best, yeah.
freak out like
Let
mode.
the hate flow through you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
That's his tagline.
So I think it's important to point out like professional examples that span the whole spectrum, and people I think need to identify with where it is on the spectrum. And sometimes you might need encouraging positive, to get yourself further up the spectrum. And other times I think you need to talk yourself down from the ledge from too high up on the spectrum. And I'm more the latter. Like I have to try to work my way down more times than I have to pick myself up.
So how do you deal with it though? The anxiety, the pressure.
Yeah, I think something Matt mentioned earlier, additional perspective has been super, super key for me. When I realized that somebody on my college team who, even back in college, I viewed as a far superior athlete, physically, technically, mentally, like in all parts of the game, like far superior to me. When I realized that he went to Europe and played futures and challengers for like 6 or 8 months and didn't win a single match, and I was like, okay, so I know I'm not even close to him, and he obviously is not going to make it, as a professional tennis player, but gave it his best shot. That was the first, I think, big wake-up call for me, perspective-wise, where I was like, wow. Like, that just put me in my place in terms of my own perspective of myself. And that helped, I think, realign my expectations on the court. Yeah. And now with, like, work and family, and after really hitting rock bottom at the end of college, I had to kind of have a reckoning with myself about how important the game was to me, and my need to realign myself, like spiritually and mentally, like with the game. I realized leaving college that if I didn't do that, I was just going to be a miserable person on the court, and I hated that idea.
Well, it's not like tennis has anything to do with what you do day to day, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's not essential pickleball.
And I guess maybe it's complicated for me in that sense, but I kind of separate my view of myself as a coach and a player.
As
two different baskets.
As everybody should.
And so I took a solid 15-year hiatus from viewing myself as a player at all.
Yeah.
And so this last 6 or 8 months has been a really interesting experience for me, winding up that clock again and seeing like what happens coming out the other side of it.
So
I got a great one after. Go ahead.
I'm seeing a theme here. So you guys are starting to become more mature and handle the anxiety and the emotions.
I want to go that far.
Yeah,
but I mean, so you're saying
I'm not mature. Handle the anxiety better, yes.
You're saying
I'm a 40-year-old with a mohawk and 2 earrings, man.
So you're saying I got to have 2 kids and a wife, and I'll become a more mentally better player.
It'll fix everything.
Right,
yeah, you won't have any problems anymore.
Right, there we go.
Leave your comment in the.
But it's so how do I handle it? I think the youth, especially your channel, knows this. I'm very sarcastic. I use humor to really like get my mind out of the gutter in a negative, very negative aspect, because I am more naturally a pessimist.
Do you ever feel like you shoot yourself in the foot with the sarcasm and like the quippy like?
In what way though?
Being a smart ass. Like, do you ever feel like it takes your mind off being a good competitor?
It takes.
That's a good question.
It takes my mind off of it, but in a good way, because I am very, very much invested in the tennis match, and especially the results of it, to where actually like having like a quick joke, like something I do nowadays is well, that too, like, because I'm super angry. I want to break a racket. I don't want to maybe do a Djokovic where I hit an umpire in the throat with a tennis ball, but I'm freaking angry, and just yelling out Zverev as kind of like a meme or like it makes me laugh.
Like releases your negative.
It does.
Zverev.
You have Lemry, I have Zverev. It's as simple as that. And one of the things I do is, I think you saw this with I think might have been against Alex Lau in one of the matches here a few months ago, where someone would hit a clean winner past me, not even close to the line. And I'll look at the mark sarcastically and I'll say, okay, I'll give it to you. It barely caught the line when it was clearly in. Obviously, that's not really, the most professional thing to do, but I'm not changing a line call. But it's one of those things where I'm like, using humor in a very sarcastic way to kind of
balance you,
ease my way back into that, spectrum of like, oh, I used to be at a 10.5. Now with a few jokes and, some sarcasm aside, I'm more like a 7.5, which is probably my ideal state as a competitive tennis player in singles.
So you feel like the jokes help release the stress?
Yeah.
Okay.
It takes me out of the game, but not in a way that you kind of phrased it. It takes me out of the game in a way that makes me perform better as a human being on the court.
And I think it's important to come back to, I think all three of us at some point have talked about how it's going to be different for different people. If I made sarcastic jokes to myself, it would increase my...
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
I'd get more pissed at myself because it would just be like a low-key way of me like like chastising myself.
Right. Yep.
So that wouldn't work for me at all.
Okay.
I have to come back to like appreciation or like perspective or like gratitude. That's kind of what works best for me personally. But everybody's gonna have a different kind of release point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going back to the perspective moment. So I had 2 perspective moments out of college. So I played a little bit right out of college, and we've talked about this before, but I got big into in Illinois platform tennis. And so I was doing tennis in the summer and then platform tennis in the winter, and it was pretty funny. So my part in platform tennis is strictly doubles.
Yeah.
But we were playing against, and our team was really good. I think I was nationally ranked at the time. And so we're playing this.
What level?
So Series 1, the highest level, and there
nice.
is, yeah. And so we
need to play some paddle.
I know, I can't wait. But we were playing this team, and again, I was playing tournaments. I was investing a lot of time. We were playing this team that just kind of started playing maybe a couple years in, and my partner and I ended up winning, but I was very disappointed in the win because, again, I thought we should have beat them worse than we did. And my partner, he played at Ohio State, so he was a big-time tennis player.
Oh.
And he looked at me and goes, man, those guys were good. And I looked at him like, yeah, because you don't have a ranking next to your name doesn't mean you're not a good player. So that was started to become my aha moment. And then I'll never forget, I was hitting with a member at one of my clubs, and he was probably low 4.5 or just on that cusp of very high 4.0. And we were playing on my favorite surface, clay, and he would have beat me pretty bad on a fast hard court. I can't. But I beat him 6-4, and he was disappointed in my performance. He thought I should have beat him worse. That was the first time we've ever played. So he doesn't really know my level, but he assumes because I'm a coaching professional that I'm some amazing stud D1 player or whatever. And I looked at him and I said, I haven't really played tennis, trained in tennis for 6 years. I'm actually very happy with what I just did. So he was trying to bring me down a little bit, and I went up. But again, it was the aha moment of perspective of how much you're putting into your game, how much realistic time do you have to do it. And the other thing too, I would say to people, and this is tough in the club setting, most people don't care how well you're doing in tennis. I mean, they don't. I mean, you can go home and say, hey, you tell your wife or your friends, but it's funny. Most of my friends don't play tennis, or I have a crew that plays platform tennis and they're pros. But if I said to my crew, hey, I played a match on the Essential Tennis Court and I won, they'd be like, great. What do you want to do for later? It's just not. So I think it's kind of putting it of, what are these triggers that are really getting you upset as well?
Yeah.
I think something you just said, and we'll probably start wrapping it up. Unfortunately, we could probably talk about this for 3 hours. But I think something you just said is really important, that transition, at least for me, when I left college, that was, up until that point, the most important thing in my life to me, all day, every day, was tennis. And I feel like I had to step away from that experience for a while and really reflect on where I was, the dark place that I was mentally, before I could really kind of detach those negative strings and go in a different direction. And tennis is still my life and my career, but my identity as a player now, thankfully, is not how
you view it.
Yeah, it's not how I perceive my value in the world is whether I win or lose. Thank God. That's that would be terrible, especially with the YouTube audience and all that.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that kind of weird that you have to have almost not a completely split personality, but some sort of partition in your head.
There has to be.
You
Yeah.
as a tennis coach and you as a competitor.
Yeah, and I mean, I even think though from on the club level side too. I mean, I'll never forget. I spoke to a client. This was obviously years ago, and you said something. I don't know if it was one of your emails you sent out, and this was probably a year ago. Is you should have almost a good nervous energy. Anytime you almost anything in life,
indication.
right? Yeah, hey, in your career, you're starting something new. You're talking to a big client. You're competing. That's fun.
Should be important.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
But at the same time, if you are, I'll never forget. I talked to this lady, and she was basically She was angry all the time. She was stressed. And I flat out looked at her. I'm like, why are you playing? Like, if you're not having fun, and again, everybody competes different, but I'm like, if you're not enjoying your time, you shouldn't be
here, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing this. And I think, as like a lot of club players do as well, they associate their identity with wins and losses, and that's unfortunate, because you hear a lot of people, my friend moved up, I want to be on this team, USTA, like it's just so much baggage you're carrying with you. It should not be it's fun to win and all that, but if you have that mentality and you step on the court and you're playing somebody lower than you, you're putting so much stress, or playing somebody better than you, like you have your time to shine, you still don't win. That it's just I don't think you'll have any triggers to settle you down, because it's just going to keep, that stress is just going to keep mounting.
Yeah, it's been really evident to me the last several months as this match against Ben has been really hyped up, and I don't know how many messages I've read from people on the internet saying, like, so if you lose this match, your career's done, right? Like you're finished.
Should just close the door. You should,
just like
do a montage video, like
just walking away. Yeah,
Sarah McLachlan.
The police tape over the door.
But there's a certain percentage of tennis players out there who they have that kind of view of like winning and losing, and that's, man, I feel bad for. If I had that view, like, there's no way I could play tennis. Like, it'd be impossible, because every point would have so much weight. It would be impossible to play well.
Yeah. So you shout negatively and positively.
I'm like Jekyll and Hyde. I'll do both.
And overall, what's yours?
I would say I'm probably 70-30 for negative.
Yeah.
Like I love a good come on every now and then, but I lean a little heavier towards the, like, trying to calm the negative energy.
So calming is your
releasing,
best way.
Yeah,
mine is sarcasm.
Sarcasm.
So.
What is yours?
What's yours?
I would love to know, like,
Super
some of the
personality.
comments. What is what are their tells, or not tells, but what are their methods?
I'm sure some of us in the comment section will write down something like whiskey on a change.
And whiskey in the water bottle.
I'm sure there's going to be more conventional ones, and that's perfectly okay. But there's going to be some weird ones that I'll get, and I want to see what they say.
Yeah,
for sure. Awesome. Who knows? It might even work better for me than these stupid, sarcastic comments you guys hear every now and then.
I mean, the videos will be more boring.
Yeah,
right? But maybe who knows? Yeah. You got to try different stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for sharing. Great episode. Again, I feel like we could just probably just keep talking about this until the whiskey's gone, but we need to move on. So thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate it, and make sure to subscribe to the Shankcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back soon with a new episode. That's it.